Smile.
Good evening, everyone. John Henry Soto here, along with George Batista. As always, welcome to the Counterparts show. We are very excited to have you here. As always, tonight we're going to be talking about those buildings that they built, those structures that they built in Egypt a long, long time ago. Or was it a long time ago? We don't really know. It could have been like in the 20s and we didn't even know. But because media was back. Anyway, stick around and we're going to talk about those big giant structures. All right. Thank you very much again for joining us this evening and for spending this time with us. We always appreciate it and we love you for doing that because I know that the world has got a lot of things going on and people are getting bombarded with stuff. If you're here, man, that really means a lot to us. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yes.
George, we're going to be talking today about an interesting subject. But before we do that, why don't we talk about an interesting and fantastic company?
Yes. So, the Counterpart Show is brought to you by Wellness Resources, a family owned and operated nutritional supplement company providing the highest quality, clinically formulated supplements since 1985. Find out why Wellness Resources supplements are the top choice of health conscious individuals around the world. Go to myvitaminresource.com. Check out all the supplements that they have available. And if you enter the promo code Counterparts, you will get free shipping on your order. And on top of that, as always, they have their monthly special. And this month special is their 25% off their joint and repair supplements and 30% off their repair pack. And by the way, I've been using these supplements for almost about 17 years now.
Wow.
So just so you know, and that's why they are some of the best in my in my opinion. So again, it's myvitaminresource.com, promo code Counterparts, and check out all the supplements. myvitaminresource.com.
All right. Well, this evening we're going to be discussing the pyramids. Now, there are a lot of pyramids all over the world, obviously, and one of the probably the most famous ones are the ones in Egypt. Would you say those are the most famous ones? I guess
Yes,
the
yes.
ones in Egypt, the pyramids of Giza,
Giza.
or or some people pronounce it Giza. Um, and I was reading a lot about these structures, and this is again, last week we covered UFOs, and it was like one of those subjects that we know a lot of people do cover, and it's not we're not reinventing the wheel here by covering these stories, but we wanted to have our own take on it, documented, and we wanted to kind of just have a little bit of fun with these interesting mysteries of the planet. And we thought the pyramids is definitely a mystery because trying to build those things today is almost impossible.
Hmm.
There's a certain level of, well, we're going to talk about my views on the ones that built it and what I think. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to be covering a little bit about the science of it, the size, location. I wanted to give everyone sort of an idea of where we're looking at here on Earth. Like where are the pyramids? I think when I was growing up, I just always thought the pyramids were, really, really far somewhere, way down, like around Grand Concourse. And in the Bronx, I thought it was like way over there. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to go to Grand Concourse. I'm not getting on the 4 train again. So, but no, it's even farther than that. So
Hmm.
I'm going to give you guys a little bit of mass of where it is. I'm here. I have a map here. You can see here the letter B. I don't know why it's B actually. It says B, but that's where we're located for boy, I guess. Um,
Batista.
Batista. There you go. So that's where I am. George is actually where the star is. So you're where the star is.
Yes.
Um, but I'm in Tennessee right now, and Egypt, if you can see the little red dot there, that's where Egypt is. I mean, that's where the pyramids are. As a matter of fact, dot is exactly on top of where the pyramids are. And it's very interesting to see them. I mean, it is in Africa, obviously, right? This is
Mhm.
and so it's a very when I saw this, years ago, obviously I didn't just see this today, but I just learned
You just learned about the pyramids today, John?
that this thing is not even around Grand Concourse. Um, but yeah, I realized, that there's just so much other places in that area. Like, there's so many. For us to have only those pyramids in that one little area, there's just got to be a lot more that we just have not uncovered. Because remember, the pyramids were buried for a long, for thousands of years, and we're under sand. I think somebody was walking and they tripped over a little point, and they just started digging. Like, how deep does this go? And they just kept going, and next thing I'm thinking, assuming that's what happened.
Mm.
But that gives you a little bit of just a directional of where they're actually located. And then one other thing that I thought was interesting, I went to Google Maps, which I do often, to just look at the world and to look at different parts of the world and stuff. And I wanted to see the pyramids where they are. And for some odd reason, when they don't show them, they show them like this. So
Mm.
they're still buried. So I don't know if that's done on purpose, or if I don't know, or maybe it is all sand and they just haven't, because obviously, with Google Maps, you got to get a car, right? Google car, the car's got to drive around there and stuff, and
Yeah, but there are cars that drive around there.
that's what I'm saying. But I don't. Maybe Google, the Google car, can't get through
It's
there.
just yeah, it is kind of weird how, like, where I used to live, I literally can get a Google map and it's like I'm standing in the middle of the street and I could see a 360-degree view of all the houses on that street.
Isn't that weird? I mean, it's crazy.
But
I can do
yet
the same
the
thing here.
pyramids who've been there for
Yeah,
forget about it, you can't even see that.
yeah.
It's
There's
ridiculous.
nothing. It's like half covered. So I don't know where that came from. It's very bizarre.
Already my
But anyway,
gosh.
and that's just on that map. I don't know if, I mean, that's Google Maps, so I don't know if there's another map that maybe has them, and it's a little bit more clearer than that. But anyway, that gives us that. So, do you have any stats for us, George?
I do actually. Just a few stats on the one that's probably the most famous, which is the Great Pyramid of Giza. Giza. Yes. So this pyramid is 481 feet tall. And it's made from 2.3 million blocks. Okay. The
Talk about
insane the the insanity of this is that some of these blocks weigh upwards of 50 tons.
yeah.
It's just
Man,
unbelievable.
you talk about a Lego obsession.
Yes, exactly. And for centuries, this was the tallest building on Earth. For
Yeah,
many, many centuries, it was. And each side is 755 feet as far as from the length of each side. And the interesting thing is that each side actually is off by a roughly maybe an inch and a half to 2 inches.
yeah, yeah. And that probably has to do with movement of
Exactly,
years.
exactly.
It probably was at one point perfect
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, it's the same thing as
corrosion, and
when you look at directionally where it is, it's actually pointing to true north.
right. That's another.
And they say that it's off of true north by a very small margin, and that's probably again because the axis of the earth actually shifts
Right.
over time.
Correct.
So it was probably perfect when they did it.
Yeah. And that's one of the mysteries of why, and you can, there's so many different things, like what is it, the Anunnakis, they talk
Mm,
about, they were the ones that kind of built it, and they had these big brains, and they had, whatever that they talk about,
right.
when I say they, I mean me too, because I talk about that. I'm part of that group.
Your
But
brain is not that big though.
yeah, I'm just, it's very fascinating, very fascinating to see how, you know, the different ideas that people have on how they were built. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because if you go to, there's certain people in Egypt, I mean, certain archaeologists, very well-known archaeologists, that have said that these were built by the slaves, and that they put these stones on these logs,
Right.
50, what was it?
50 tons.
50 tons on a log, and just roll them. Now, and then they roll them up around, they will put them
Yeah.
into place. It is, I just find that incredibly, it just does not make sense for something
Well,
like that.
I think they debunk. Oh, we got a. What's
Was
that?
there light bulbs found in the pyramid? I'm not sure. I it did say in there soft white in there. No,
Now
actually,
they
I
have
don't.
LEDs now.
Yeah, it had GM on the or GE
But
was on the top.
but the point of the thing was, I think they apparently debunked the whole thing about it being built by slaves, right?
Right, yeah, that's been debunked. Except, I mean, there
Right,
are still a minority, I guess,
right.
of people that do still believe that that was built by the slaves, and you know. But there was a theory a few years ago that I saw, that they thought that these were actually energy towers, that
Yes,
they had some liquid at the bottom, and then that they poured some stuff in, and it created, like, and it shot into, I don't know how exactly, but it shot into space, sort of these lights and stuff, and it was a sort of like a light energy source that was used, so
and
that was a very interesting
who was one of the first people who actually had a theory similar to that?
Desi
Was
Arnaz.
no,
Oh,
it was Lucy. No, no, she created Star Trek. It was Nikolai Tesla.
yes, yeah,
Tesla
that
was
dude.
obsessed. He was obsessed with the pyramids at one point, and
Right.
he actually talked about energy and the that whole thing. So
Yeah.
went heavily into that.
Yeah, and the chamber, they found, in this particular documentary that I watched, they found there was a certain layer that was, the walls were a different composite than everything else, like almost like there was a liquid there, like when you have a flood in a
Right.
neighborhood, and the flood
Mhm.
is there for a long time, and then the water goes down, and you have that rim
Yes.
of that. So there is something like that. So they were wondering that could this actually have been a light source, or could it have been one of those Hollywood lights when there's a movie premiere? It's simple as that. They just got really into it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really a fascinating thing. Like, they say, okay, they were built for the pharaohs. They were built for kings, right? Because there was an idea that that would shoot them back into the heavens,
Right.
along with all their possessions and stuff would go up. That was debunked fairly quickly as soon as the grave robbers got in
Yeah.
and took everything,
Yes.
and
Yes.
these poor gods got up there without their ColecoVision or PS4s and stuff. So, the frustration of anyone that was protecting the grave. I mean, you figure that there was somebody protecting the graves for a while, and then over
Mhm.
time, it was just like, ugh, I'm not
True.
gonna keep going there and standing there all day long just trying to protect. There's nothing in there, you
Yeah.
know. And then somebody just kind of like left their post, and then that's when, or it was an inside job, and the guy was like, "Hey, Tony is on tonight. Why don't we see if we'll give him half of the money if he lets us in?" And then the guy was all right. And then him and Jerry and Tony met there, and they took whatever they can, and they gave Tony a really good thing, And he just, all he has to do is just stand there, because nobody's going in, so nobody has
True.
to know its stuff is gone anyway, right? I mean, nobody has
Like
to know it.
Goodfellas.
Yeah. So then it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like a good fellow, like Lufthansa heist from Goodfellas, you know.
But it's very interesting because there's so many theories on why these things were built. First of all, apparently it took them. They guessed that it took them about 20 years to build, right? And if you follow the theory of men actually dragging these blocks, right?
Into
It was apparently 600 men roughly can drag one block,
Right.
right? So the amount of manpower that and the amount of people that you just had to
And
do it, and you think
organization.
the organ that's the big piece,
That's the
because there
part
had
of
to
it.
be unbelievable organization in this
Yeah.
thing.
Now there's, I mean, to Christina had a good point about the light bulbs, right? Because it is, if it was sort of like a light source, or if it was a source for energy that was needed, that was like a desperation from the people, then you
Mhm,
might be able to get 600 men, like, like the Civil War, for instance. You know what I mean?
mhm,
You,
mhm.
you get recruits and people go out and they fight, and
Right,
because there's an honor there, and there's protecting their families and the country and stuff, right? So you could have that if there was something that was really needed as far as an energy source. They were going to die or whatever was going to happen. But the organizing of 600 men to into place on a daily basis, now they were saying they were slaves. That would not fly for 20 years. Those
no,
slaves, first of all, 600 men is a lot of men. They're going to uproar. They're going to uprise, I should say. There's going to be somebody, and it's probably going to be Tony. And he's
it's
going to
always
be,
Tony,
yeah, he's going to be getting everybody together. He's like the Jimmy Hoffa back then, you know what I mean?
right?
And he
He's probably
organized.
buried under there.
Yeah. He's at one of the corners. So, he's probably, somebody organized, and they wanted to get a union started, and then they started a big riot. That must have happened a long time, many, many times. And they built three of these suckers. I mean, one great one and then two smaller ones for son and wife, and a couple of other little tiny ones for, I think one was for a Chihuahua. I'm just kidding. But there were smaller ones around.
But if you think about it, but here's my thing on this. I mean, if you think about, if these things were supposedly erected, let's just say they were erected for gods. Well, wouldn't it be very easy for the governmental bodies of the time to convince the masses that they must do this for the gods?
Correct. Correct.
Right? Wouldn't
Correct.
that
Yeah.
wouldn't that be,
If you
because
have,
you think about it, I mean, the government convinces people to this day to do pretty much all kinds of shit,
right. Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. And I think also the fear that if they don't, bad things would happen.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
the fear that you instill. I mean, I guess, I mean, sadly, but it's been going on for a very, very long time, to fear people into doing
Right, right,
things, right? Um, like I was at the Walmart and I did not want to get Time Warner, but they they made me scared that my Verizon was going to be cut and was going to go up in price. I got scared. I got scared. I'm not going to lie, and I went for it and I got Time Warner. Turned out to be really good too. It really helped. But so simple things like that. Now, if you
right,
start looking at the gods punishing people and all that, then you can get people to do that.
right, right.
Um, it's still far fetched physically that they can do it.
Yes,
Now, let's
because
also,
it can't be because they can't do it today. I mean, but
but
again,
again, and I want to talk
yeah,
about that too, about the fact that
yeah.
they can't do it today. But remember, the limestone that they have for this pyramid were like 1,000 miles away, so they
Way
have
they
to
had to bring
bring it
that over. Right,
over. That's
right,
number one,
right.
right? Now, there's no drag. There would be drags and there would be lines for
And
thousands of
story that,
miles.
right, right.
Some kind of way of bringing people. Yeah, exactly. A road, a highway, something, a railroad. There'd
Yes.
be something that they would bring, right? But there was nothing. Now, another thing is that because we're sort of a let's face it. I mean, we're arrogant this time and space of we're arrogant into thinking that in the past people just were not capable, like
Mhm.
thousands and thousands of years ago. They were like,
Right,
oh, they got only rocks and we don't know exactly how advanced these civilizations were. We don't know if they were from this planet because, as we all know now, the Pentagon and today, what was it? Space Force released a thing saying that we have to be ready because we have been visited by or we got to be ready to be visited by people, right? So
right.
that becomes part of the whole narrative of this. And so back then, you start wondering, well, if they're not from here, you can understand how these things can be built through other ways,
Mm.
through sound, for instance.
Yes, that's another thing they
That's
thought
another
about. Yes.
theory, you know,
Right.
through sound, like really, really advanced sound, machines
Mhm.
that can manipulate stone and
Right.
turn it into the shape that's needed, lift it up and brought to wherever wherever you need it, right?
Right. Correct.
This just a technology that we just do not have. You know, I'm convinced that the pyramids were not built by just the people that live there live there now. You know, I mean, I just don't.
So
I,
don't you think, well, I
there's a
mean, okay, so
technology that we don't know about that built
correct.
those
You
things.
know,
That's all I know.
they obviously were able to do things that are today considered impossible, right? Even
Correct.
just the mathematics of it,
Right.
because at that time there wasn't this system of mathematics that we know of today. They literally had to, figure things out. But yet, when you go inside the tombs and you see especially the limestone, right?
Mhm.
It's cut literally in completely straight lines to the point where you
Yeah.
can't even put a credit card in through it, right?
Correct.
It's that together, and it's amazingly with such precision that nobody knows how to do it. But my thing is, okay, so whatever technology they use, let's just say they use the sound technology. And again, I'm just talking as a lay guy here. Why wouldn't that technology be passed down through the generations?
It wasn't from here. My
Yeah, but
only
think about it. Even if you say that the technology that we have today was is not was let's just say the technology that we're using today, we got it from somebody somewhere, an alien that crashed at some point. Okay, well, the technology that we use today is going to be passed down through generations.
correct. But that's, we're looking at life maybe 10,000 years,
Right.
right? 10,000 years. Now the
That's what they
pyramids were,
say. Now we probably
that's what they're saying,
that's what
right?
they
But
say. Right.
there has been there's a lot of other proof that that's not the case. But
Right. Correct.
um, for just for argument's sake, let's just say that that is correct. You know, if you had a group of, now I'm going to go way out there. I'm going to do a
Mhm.
ancient aliens conversation, right?
Right.
If you had, if this world that we're on right now is not the only one,
Mhm.
right? Now there's some people that say that the world is flat and that we're just in this firmament, what's it called, for and it's we're all trapped into this one location, and it's just, and there's ice all around us and we can't pass the ice, and that's where we are right now, as and that's one theory, right?
Mhm.
And then there are other people that feel that there are other planets and that there's other life besides this, if there is, right, an
Right.
advanced civilization. And they these pyramids also have been found on other planets, right?
Right.
They've seen these pyramids on Mars, which is not really uncovered as much as you can find it. You know what I mean? And NASA has documented them, and the moon is another place that has these. Again, the moon is one of those controversial places, that people
Right.
talk about.
Right.
What is it really? You know what I mean? Is it
Mhm.
a dead rock? Is it a space station? Is it, what is it? The dark side of the moon. So if there was a civilization that arrived here and needed to be here for some reason and needed an energy source, but they were super advanced. If you look at some of the photos in the pyramids of the of these men and women, their heads, right, were these huge, giant,
Yeah.
elongated things that makes you think. And it wasn't their hats. I mean, people say
Right.
it was just their heads were that
Right.
way. So it makes you think that they had some other special ability that they can maneuver. Um, they can maneuver things, you know, um,
Mhm.
with their minds, with their energy source. There's a lot of stuff in our head that can be destroyed by some of the stuff that we have here on Earth today. As a matter of fact,
Right.
what's it called, the pituitary gland
Right.
um, can get shrunken by things like fluoride
Fluoride.
and
Right.
things like that, and that is like a really, really important part of our brain, as a matter of fact.
Correct.
So if that's developed tremendously, like these guys, and they have a huge, giant pituitary gland, can you imagine what they can do with that? The amount of energy that they can put together to build something.
True.
So
True.
that's kind of like out there,
Mhm.
but it's fun to have those conversations, because the bottom line is that there they are.
Yeah.
There they are.
There they are, and they were
And no
built to
one and no one
last.
has a definitive answer as to how they were put there. No one can do that.
Nope.
Everyone has their speculation. I just had 4 of them. We just had 4 of them
There,
now.
there was a guy. He's an archaeologist who gave up like his job and everything just to study this stuff, and his theory was the internal ramp theory.
The
Because
internal.
we've heard in other words, we've heard the theory that they were external. There was a ramp going to the pyramid, and then there were ramps around the outside of the pyramid that let them bring the
Right.
blocks in. Well, his theory, when he looks at it and he went there and he looked, inside or whatever, that there was actually a ramp built internally, and that you could actually still see. And I mean, when you really look at it, it made a lot of sense the way, because when you see the corridor and you see the way the corridor is made, and he was saying that he thinks that this is where the little, I guess you would call them like little trolleys that they built would kind of drag through these areas, and they were parts of the rock that were worn away. You could tell it was going all the way up to the top, that type of thing. So, I mean, it seemed interesting, his
Yeah.
theory. Now, again, it's a theory,
Yeah.
but I thought it was, but it's one of the theories that a lot of the archaeologists are going, what, that's if you go with the fact that how they got that stuff in and to the top. Basically.
Correct. Yeah, and the part of it that's interesting is, here we have a map of these pyramids, and so they were built obviously for these different pharaohs.
Mhm.
Khufu, we all know.
Yes, Khufu.
Khufu. Of course, how can you forget Khafre and
Yeah.
Menkaure? So yeah, and so these pyramids that were, we don't know if this is actually what was, if this was accurate, as they could just say anything. Like the Sphinx, for instance, was added to it. There was stuff that added
Right.
to it. You can
Right.
see that the Sphinx was not what that was. It was a
Right.
completely different thing.
Yes.
They added all these things to it. So we don't know necessarily that this is actually what it, what history has shown us, or has taught us anyway, right?
Right.
And I think one of the things that I've learned through schooling, is that there's a lot of things in history that do not necessarily teach us the possibility that it could be something else.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really taught in history, or history is like, they make history be like math. Math is an exact thing. Well, I know some people say now it's racist, certain math equations, but math is an exact thing, right? I mean, math is also like a universal thing, right? Because it's not saying our math, right? That is right. It's just saying that, like, for instance, this thing and this thing make 2 things, right? That's
Right.
math,
Right.
right? And so the universe is built of things, of anything that has to do with energy. So an energy and an energy make 2 energies, right? 2 things will be 2. That is math, right? Based on that, from us, our equations and everything else, it gets very, very complex, because now we're putting in our physics, and we believe that this is gravity, right? So this falls at a certain rate, and then they do that. That's the math. But there is other math. There are other things, in my opinion, in the universe dimensions and things that we do not understand,
Right.
that we do not understand, that we are so arrogant as a culture that we just think, well, no, this is the way it is. Math is this is the math. Well, yes, in a way, but it goes much deeper than that, because you don't know all the elements that are in the universe, right? We
Right.
have the
Right.
elements here, right?
Right.
And each element can, you can put some of these elements together, and some of them can blow up, some of them can create this, some of them can create computer chips, big boobs, whatever they can, certain chips, certain things can create, certain elements can create certain effects.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, if there's a universe out there, what are all those elements? There's probably thousands of other elements, millions of other elements, trillions of other elements that we just have not explored. So this is
Correct.
where the technology, if you had an element called blibli and another one called doo, and you put that together down there, and it creates an energy source that can lift stones pretty easily.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just the way we can lift boobs pretty easily. It's like, I think that's where the conversation needs to be more in that area. What is out there that we're not discovering yet, or that we haven't discovered yet?
No, I agree. I agree. There's you make good points there. And again, my thing is, but even I go back to my point. Even if that's the case, somewhere that was suppressed, right? Because then it gets to the point where all of a sudden nobody knows.
I think, yeah, but I think it's also not necessary. I think when you don't know, you guess. And
True.
then you follow one person that maybe has the loudest voice, the most money, the most influence, the most
To get the
arrogance.
consensus.
Yeah. And then that becomes the word. You know what I mean? And I think that
Yes.
that becomes the danger of that becomes the danger today, as well as, and so I don't know if I don't know if that's the full the full
Well, it
deal.
it you, it ends up. Well, you're right, because it ends up following a narrative,
Right.
and then that narrative is okay. That's the way, and then it just again we talked about it last week, how many narratives have been eventually disproven years later.
Yeah.
There's things that happened hundreds of
Um,
years ago that are now realizing that there was not the case.
correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And I think that, when we talk about not just, if we have the conversation about the pyramids, that it has, without using the stuff that we know, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Without using what we've been told, let's strip away all the things. Let's strip away, the state slaves dragged the ramps. Let's
Hmm.
strip away all of the things that we have
Hmm.
already, someone has already speculated as being true.
Right.
If we push that all aside for a second, clean the slate, and then start throwing things on there that are really wild, and that maybe science fiction like,
Hmm.
and then start from that place, because we've already reached a place in society that, you know uh we've gone to space, right? We have, we have robots doing stuff, we have self checkout, we have these technologies, we have this technology here of being live on the air, we have our cell phones being our sources of communication to the world, right? Technology has advanced pretty rapidly, right?
Right.
So
Right.
let's take it from where we are today, as opposed to taking it from where we're still using the same narrative that was put there 50 years ago when the pyramids were being dug out.
Hmm.
You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And I think that that's not really a good way of doing it.
So why? Okay, so then if you look at it, let's look at it from the space perspective. Okay, so if let's say whoever Billy and Joe came down in a disc.
Tony.
Tony, that's right. I forgot about Tony. Comes down and they show us this technology, and they So here's what I would propose. Okay, so if they come down, and obviously it's a primitive culture back then. These guys fly down. That's it. They're gods.
Correct.
They're
Correct.
gods.
And that's one of the arguments that's been
Right.
talked about.
So there's no. So these guys are like now doing this. Okay,
Correct.
and then now it's okay. Now we're gonna build these things, maybe with the help, with Tony's help or not, or whatever the case may be. You could say maybe Tony helped them, or maybe Tony didn't help them. Maybe they did it for Tony,
Right.
even after Tony left.
Right.
Right. And then we're building this as a monument to them. And really, that's where all that stemmed from, because they came down and they gave them, all this writing, and they gave them all these things. I mean, you have to open your mind, because we look at the writing in there, you see them pointing up in the sky. You see
Right.
discs in the writing. You see
Right.
things that look like crafts. You see, there's even if you go into Australia, you go into some of these other places where they have hieroglyphics, they have helmets on.
Right. Helmets with like the five.
Yeah, they have like literally helmets, things sticking out of the helmets and all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I would say, well, then really maybe that's what they were worshiping. Maybe that's really what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, that is one of the more popular conversations that people have had on it, or theories. I kind of do gravitate towards that theory, in the sense that if anyone did come down, even today, not now, the government and whatever, the Pentagon, they're preparing us for some kind of a something landing, whether it's real thing or they're doing it. I don't know. I don't trust the government on certain things. But if they were to come down, why are they doing it on the government's schedule? Why is the government not coming out and warning us that why don't they just come down whenever they want? Right? Why are they up there going like, okay, so guys, we've been announced. They're talking about us in the Pentagon. I think we need to have an important meeting here and discuss when are we going to land. Let's find out what they're saying next. You know what I mean? It's so dumb, because they think people are dumb. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they play on that, and they just use, and they try to manipulate because if it were actually up there and they're up there right now, they can come down at any second right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, hey. Okay. Take it away. Guy comes in, right through the wall. Oh, I was just talking about you guys. So, it's like, why would we even have to have the conversation? Why does the Pentagon have to come out and say anything? Just leave it
Because
alone.
it's only official if they say it.
Correct. That's my point on that. You know what I mean? Like, if 4,000 years ago, right, in the pyramids were around, or when they were not around, these gods came down, or these aliens came down. Yes, things were pretty primitive 4,000
Right.
years ago, as far as what we can tell,
Right.
right? So yes, somebody would look at that and say, "Oh my God, those are gods. Those are our gods." And then they come down. They're going to have obviously more advanced technology. They're going to be able to do a lot of things. And if they built these things for, I just think that if there were gods, if they were from up there, that they would not necessarily come down and want these things built in their honor. You know what I mean? It's like they can just go anywhere else. Like, why would they just want to have these 3 stone? They have all this technology
Well,
to fly around through space, but now I'm gonna get limestones in this shape and have that be in my honor. I mean, those are pretty arrogant aliens, if you
well,
ask.
we're okay, but we're assuming that they built it in their honor. We're just saying, okay, maybe
Right.
there's the
Well,
possibility that they built it in their honor.
that's what the
Right.
history has
That's what
told
we're
us.
saying. But what I'm saying, but why wouldn't they? Because if we're seeing these things in other planets,
Right.
then why wouldn't they come here and do it?
But why would they do it there? There's other reasons for it. The fact that it points north, to true north. The fact that they
Mhm.
all do that, they all kind
Mhm.
of align, really. I mean,
Mhm.
again, there are people that are rolling their eyes, and they're saying there's nothing up there, whatever. We're in a very, very different time today, because there are amateur astronomers that have the technology that they had 100 years ago, 1,000 times advanced. These
Right.
are people in their backyards. These are people that are millionaires that have built tremendous telescopes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if you look at MUFON, right? MUFON, the organization,
Yeah.
um, so they are in constant communication with astronomers all over the world,
Hmm.
on what they found and things that they've seen and all that stuff. It's not a mystery anymore that there is something out there, simply because there are people out there that have the ability to look at themselves. So
Correct.
if an alien comes down, we're not going to think of them as gods anymore,
Correct.
right? We're going to think
Correct.
of them as exactly what they are, beings from
Y-
another world.
Yeah, but why is that? Because society has already implanted what they think the meaning of God is.
Right. Right. Well,
Right? Because think about it. If an alien comes down and he looks like the most powerful thing, we're not going to say no, he's a god, because it's already built in
right.
generationally
Right.
what a
Modern
god is.
religion.
And it could be whatever god you want. I'm just saying
Correct.
that we all grow up with a certain theory of God in our
Right.
heads, right?
Sure.
And that's it. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody comes down, we're never going to say they're gods, because it's just not going to happen.
Correct. Because again, religion has already given us the idea of a god. Whatever
Correct.
religion you are, there's a
Correct.
god, right?
Correct.
And if we can all agree, every religion has, at least, if we can at least just agree to the fact that every religion just does acknowledge a creator of it all, right? Let's
Right.
just say that. Let's not talk religion. We're only talking about what's the common denominator between all the religions, is the
Right.
fact that they've agreed that there is a higher power controlling things and making things. Now here you have somebody coming down. Now there are going to be a group of people that are always going to deny that person and just say that that is the devil, and that is,
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't say it in the scriptures, or it does
Mhm.
say it in the scriptures, and all that stuff. And that's always going to be the case, and then there are other
Mhm.
people that are going to be like, well, we told you so, here they are. My fear, and not really a fear, but my interest is in how the, and I don't want to say government, because I hate using the government, but how the organizations that are manipulating, or how are they going to manipulate this to get a little bit more control over society by
Mhm.
using this fear tactic, whether it's real or not. I mean, think about it. 20 years ago, the Pentagon would never come out saying anything about aliens, right? 10 years ago, they would say stuff, but it would never, you would never see a guy on a podium saying we are preparing ourselves for a visit. And it wouldn't surprise us if the mothership is surrounding us right now, right? Which is the latest thing that they spewed. So there is something very interesting going on, and the fact that the pyramids were built so long ago, and we don't know how they were built. We really don't. I don't care what people say and what theories they all come up with. There really, nothing has been solidified, and nothing has been convincing enough to say this is the way they were built, right? But there they are, right? There they are. People visit them. Millions of people visit them every year, and they're still unexplained. So there is that mystery of that right there, and that
But if you
creation
look,
is not of this
okay, but
world.
if you let me play devil's advocate for a second. If you look at the notion that people, a people can, I don't know how you say it, but let's say harness a spiritual energy to create something.
Right.
Okay. And there are people in this world who defy logic, defy physics, defy all these things, whether it could be, you know, defying some kind of disease or defying the odds in life or doing these things. So couldn't a society who was motivated enough by their government to create something like this have the spiritual will and the means, even if we don't know what the technology is, to actually complete something like this, where again, in a space and time where people can create pretty much anything
Right.
if they really want to do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So to me, it's like you're saying, okay, you're denying the fact that human beings can really do unbelievable things in this world if they really set their mind to it. Now we have millions of them setting their mind to putting this thing together.
Right.
You don't think that they can actually get that done without help?
I don't. Our current society can do amazing things, right? We're huge,
Right, but we can't do
powerful,
that.
right? We're huge, powerful spiritual beings, and we know we can do that. Our physical bodies, for whatever reason, the pyramids do not coincide with how we construct things today. We
Yes,
do
but
not construct things today in that manner. We don't use those shapes. We don't
we
use that
don't.
kind of material. We don't use we don't have the 50-ton stones that we put into place for buildings. We
Right,
build huge skyscrapers, right?
right,
Much higher than the pyramids,
right,
right? I mean, we have in Dubai, right, the tallest building in the world,
right.
right? I mean, it's an incredible structure, but when you're talking about building something that's so unique in itself, you have to look at something otherworldly, in my opinion, that built it,
Yeah,
not
but
not the beings that were here, um,
and
4,000 years ago, that were
now
just happen to be here and that we developed from them, and that we're now, because we've obviously we've lost the ability. If we had that, we'd have a lot more. I mean, and by the way, there are other pyramids in the world that are also
of
incredible.
course
These are the
there's
most
many, but I tell you why we couldn't construct something like that today. Because man
union.
today, well, yeah, union.
Yeah, the
But
unions will not allow it.
the unions will not allow that. But man today, as presently constructed, would never have the motivation, would never have the will, would never have the
Interest,
whatever you want to call it,
no
to do
benefit.
the benefit to do something like that. Like back then, that's
The,
all
in-
there
the
was.
incentive is not
The
there today.
incentive, exactly. I mean, just if you just look at society as a whole and how horrible, not how horribly unhealthy society is, they would never last to be able to build something like that. Okay, you know how many of us would be dying of heart attacks trying to push a 50-ton block? Okay, by the time we get one, we'd have to turn over like 6 times because everybody would drop dead.
Right.
What what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
back then when you have and again, I'm just looking at it from the person perspective.
Right. Right.
Back then, when you look at it again, if you do it from the motivational perspective of the government saying that we need to construct this for the gods and you all need to do it or you're all dead, right? They have the motivation, they have and they don't have Netflix. So I mean, they
But we
have
don't
nothing
know
else.
that.
I assume they didn't have Netflix. Or at least maybe they had the DVDs, but
Yeah.
but,
Yeah. They
but
weren't
they
at they weren't streaming back then.
exactly. But the point is that
Thank you, Annie. Sorry.
they oh, they didn't have anything, or they didn't have anything else. So these people dedicated their lives
Correct.
to do this. And again, I would think that if you dedicated your life to do this, you get enough people to dedicate their lives to this. I'm sure many died. I'm right doing it,
Well, it
right?
was probably. I mean, if the theory that's been put out, right, in schools of how they were built, if that theory is actually legitimate, then you're talking about that is their job. The
Right.
guy gets up in the morning and he works on the pyramids.
Yes,
And
that is the
he's a
prevailing theory. Right.
he's a lifter, he's a pusher, he's a dragger, he's a carver, whatever the
Right.
position that he has one of the positions, and he
Right.
goes out there with 600 to 1,000 men on a daily basis to move stones into place for this purpose, whether it's for the gods, whether it's for fear, whether it's
Yes.
to put food on the table. They were just regular employees, which has been one of the reasons, or has been one of the theories that put out that these were just working men, and
Right.
were men, and maybe women. I don't know. They only talk about men, but generally men working and going out and supporting their families by working on the pyramids. And they
Right.
were part of a union, and they had,
Good
again,
benefits.
they had benefits. When you think about it, though, they must have, if you have 1,000 employees, right? Which, and again, these are people that are coming in, dying, and then
Yes.
other people are coming in, right? It's
Yes.
going on for a very, very, very long time. This isn't like a 1 year gig. This is a lifetime gig of
Yes.
of moving stones. If you are doing that and your motivation is to feed your family, for the gods,
Hmm.
it's almost like you're working for the church, right? And you're putting
Exactly.
everything you want into, because you believe so heavily that I'm doing God's work, right? So
Right.
you go and you put yourself in that situation. But to have 1,000 controlled men to do this work for 20 years, the physics of getting these stones into place is where it all falls apart. Because it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 men. 1,000 men are not going to lift. How many stones did you mention earlier?
It was one could be upwards of 50 tons.
Well, what one could be, but how many in total?
Oh, it was like 2.3 million.
2.3 million stones put into perfect shape. Now you have to think also, this was limestone, right? So
Yes.
these were
The
beautiful
insides.
when they were put in, right?
Yes.
They were
Yes.
beautiful. They were perfectly white. Now they're all, obviously they're corroded. But they were beautiful. They were white. They must have looked incredible from a
Yeah,
distance.
because they had casing stone on
They had
the
casing
outside of
stones
it.
on them.
Right.
I mean, it must have been
Correct.
just a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of architecture, right? So there was pride in building them. Somebody
Correct.
did care enough to be thoughtful, to want to create something that they knew was going to be long lasting, and that was
Right.
cared for. So I believe all that. It's the physics of it. That's where it goes out. If you had a bulldozer today, our most powerful bulldozer today would struggle at lifting some of these things. I mean, we have these big cranes, right, that are building. I don't I'm not I don't know. I've never operated a crane, but I do know that they lift heavy things. Can they lift a
Right.
50-pound into perfect location where there it's paper? You can't even, not even a paper. You said credit card earlier. No, a paper
Paper can't
piece of
fit through it.
paper can't
Yes.
fit. That's
Yes.
how tight
Correct.
that these
Correct.
seams were. So that to me is where the arguments always fall, because you're right. You can motivate a society to do something for the gods or for a god,
Mhm.
because there's passion behind it. We have people right now doing that, right? People give
Right.
their lives for their religion and for their cause,
Correct.
but the physics of it, that's where I mean, our the church in the Saint, what the hell is it called, on 103rd Street in Lexington, it's a big church that's still being built to this day. It started
Mhm.
like hundreds of years ago, and they're still
Right.
putting stones into place. You know what I mean? And it's kind of makes you think about, they're doing it for their religion. So there is energy,
Mhm.
there is power, there is the love of what they're doing. It's there,
Right.
but they have the technology, because these stones are like this big.
True.
They get them at Home Depot. Not a big deal. You know what I mean? So
What's interesting about another fact that I thought was that I didn't know was very interesting. There's a pyramid called the Bent Pyramid,
huh.
and it's the one that it starts out at one angle and then kind of folds in that way. And apparently, and again, this is what they say, that the mathematician or whoever or the architect
Made a mistake.
actually made a mistake.
Yeah.
And they actually said that it was going too steep, and if it went too steep, it would have correct because it already started. They found cracks in the area where it changed shape. So they said they literally had to change the shape to make it more narrow for the weight distribution,
Right.
which is very interesting because I always wondered why that pyramid was like that.
Yeah, it's probably because they didn't really learn anything from the
Yeah.
from the original guys. It's
Right,
like,
yeah.
didn't you? I told you. You know, Christina says these people had a vision and an amazing ability to get it done. I believe that.
Yes, they
I
did.
believe that. I
Yes,
don't
they
know
did.
what
I
the
the
the thing about it is ability. What was their ability to get it done? How? What was that ability? Not you know, their vision was definitely there, but the ability to get it done, like that to me is really remarkable.
It is, right? And again, you're dealing with because it's not only also the ability to pull the stones and stuff like that. They had to create things in order to make sure that they have everything straight. Like for example, here was another interesting one that I saw that so they were trying to say how would they cut the limestone,
Hmm.
right? I found this fascinating.
Yeah, how
And I
would
was thinking about it's like how would you cut limestone? You don't have a saw, right? To
no.
cut hard enough to cut limestone.
Lasers?
Yes. Okay.
La-
So if we put aside the laser theory for a second, I thought it was interesting. So they did have copper because they found copper in that time. So they apparently had a copper saw, but it didn't have teeth. So what they would do is they had a limestone and they had the copper saw-like thing, and what they would use is sand, and the sand would go in between the saw and the
the friction of
limestone.
the sand.
Correct, because the sand had quartz in it, and the quartz is hard enough to cut the limestone. So they would put the sand on it and go back and forth, and the sand would actually cut the limestone. Isn't that
How long?
isn't it now how long
Yeah,
would it take to cut one?
it could take. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but again, you know, there are ways, and I know that there are ways to do certain things.
Right.
You know, you know, especially when you watch a lot of these programs, and you see how they were very um, innovative in
Yes.
trying to help their communities and their livelihoods. You
Right.
know, physics is still cutting that. You know, like if you go to like what's it called, Puma Puma Kunta, what's it go to what's that other place?
Chicken.
No, no. What was it? What did you say? No, that's not it.
Huh?
It's a place in what was it you said?
Ma- Wait. Place? The
Yeah,
place that I said?
yeah. I thought you said the name of a
No, I said Kunta Kinte.
no. Oh, that I've never been to Kunta Kinte. That was the name of
Oh.
our dog. We had a dog. We had a dog name. Well, I know it wasn't. It was a Kissy Kunte. That was our name of our dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it was given to us by a guy from Africa, and his name was Kissy Kunte, so we call the dog Kissy, and it was short for Kissy Kunte. Um. Anyway, let me see. There was a place called
Machu Picchu?
no, I can't
Yes.
remember. Anyway, we'll talk about it at some point. But
What did it have to do with my saw?
because there were cuts in these stones that
Mhm.
were thousands of years old that
Right.
were perfectly not just cut on the sides, but within there were like lines within it, almost like decorations that were
Okay.
perfectly lined from one to
Right.
one other. Now another thing that people were saying was water. Like if
Yes.
you had high pressured water, you can cut through anything with really, really high pressured water. You know, if
Very
but
true.
again, you need the technology and you need the not just the technology, the power, the energy source that would be able to shoot water that fast to make
Correct.
an incision on these heavy, heavy stones. So that
Correct.
again, that's now I think that that there was a technology of some sort, and I think it could be sound. I think sound has always been a thing that people do not talk about it. You think about a computer today, right? We take computer programs and we jot into them what we want the computer program to do for us, whether it's a writing thing. Well, right now we have our AI, right? Chat GP, whatever the
Chat GPT.
yeah, Chat GPT. We just type in there, write a story about a dog and a small boy lost in the woods, right? And boom, there it is, right? So if you had the technology and you had sort of a computer system that you can type in and say, built a stone structure out of the limestone in that location, bring it to this location and make it these dimensions, and you hit enter, and then that energy source, whatever that may be, creates this whole thing and creates those things within very, very quickly, because
Right.
one of the things that we don't see in the pyramids as much are the slaves or the people dragging the stones into place.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, we don't see that. You would think somebody would document that. Now, there is some stuff of them working on things, but they're all working on smaller things. They're
Yes.
not working on like a 50-ton stone into place. You would think that would be the highlight of the whole thing. We just moved a stone. It was 50 tons. Jose, write
Tick.
that on the wall, document it, and put it up there. But nothing is documented on the building.
That's a good point.
So I think it was just,
That's a fair point.
I
Yeah.
think it was just built. And if you look at what's happening right now in Giza, of course, all these companies, they get in there and they start taking advantage of the
Right.
tourism, right? And so
Yes.
if you go there right now, you'll see like things like the Giza Mall. There's a Target.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
Starbucks. Now in the Target, there's only one outfit, and it's what that guy's wearing. That's all you can buy at the Target, but it's still a Target. The coffee has, the Starbucks, they get everywhere, So I mean,
True.
it's really annoying. That's not there, everyone. People are gonna go there thinking that. Wait, no,
Yeah,
no.
but the
I heard.
McDonald's, there's no McDonald's there.
Yeah, McDonald's was gonna go there, but the meat quality is still too good in that country.
Oh, okay.
So they're
That
waiting
makes
for it to
sense.
really to get down to the quality of where you cannot eat them, where it makes you sick, and then they'll move in. We're
They
not
probably,
sponsored
if
by
they
them.
had a burger from McDonald's back then when they built those things, it would still be perfectly preserved by today.
Yeah, and perfectly edible,
Yes,
and yeah, and probably better for you
it's
than
true.
today's stuff. But yeah. So anyway, there's a. Oh, I wanted to show this one photo which I thought was interesting. Was
Ah, yes.
the inside. So you have these what they call air shafts,
Hmm.
and then you have an entrance over here, and it goes all the way down to a subterranean chamber.
Right.
And in the subterranean chamber, they found like boxes of like old Christmas decorations, old photo albums. They found like a trunk full of old coats. Yeah, just anything that you put in the basement. Basically, they found a lot of those things down there. As you go up here in the Queen's Chamber, they did find an actual chef's kitchen in there. There's the stove. I mean, it's amazing what they have in there. I mean, it's incredible. Then the Grand Gallery.
Gallery.
Yeah, the
Yes.
Grand Gallery is just an incredible place. That's where all the balls were held,
Yes.
and yeah,
Fine dining. Yes.
that's where Cleopatra got married. Then the King's Chamber. But you see how weird that this is all set up,
Yeah.
and they give
Exactly.
it these names like King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, Grand Gallery. Like, why, if you're going to build a structure where people are going to be buried in, right? Why not just dig straight down into a smaller hole, put them straight down, and then cover it up, and then put a big wall around it, and just have like we do today,
True.
right? Isn't that what we do
Yeah.
today? We just
Yeah.
bury
Yeah.
people straight down, right? 6 feet under. And then you put if they're famous, you put like a monument around them, some kind of monument and stuff. And then that gets protected. Why build this huge thing with all these entrances and all these, oh, here's the chamber for this and the chamber for that, and these are the air vents. So here, this is where the here's the HVAC. I just it doesn't make any sense to me overall why that it was made for that. I think maybe later on they decided to hide gold in there or something, and maybe they hide a body in there.
But
But
if you go with the theory of the ancient astronaut alien theory, then there had to be some purpose to these things.
well, there is a purpose. We just don't know what the purpose is.
Right. But what I'm saying is for them to make it that way instead of just like,
I
you know
think
what
it
I
was
mean?
an energy source.
It could
I think
possibly.
I think that possibility, I think, makes more sense. The fact that if you do find them on Mars, if you do find them on the moon, I don't know if you do or not. You can all research that yourself. That there is a lot of stuff out there that is proven, or not proven, but that it is s- documented by NASA and these organizations, right? Um, and they're identical and they point towards one another, and they
True.
probably all have the same structures inside of them.
Right.
Then I would say there would be it's a good possibility that that could have been an energy source, like we talked about last time in we talked about Total Recall.
That's right.
And in Total Recall, the premise was that there was no air, but there had been some type of an air device, but because the government decided to control the air, they would turn the air off if you didn't pay your
Yes.
you didn't do what you were supposed to do. I mean, the government would never do stuff like
The government would never do
that.
that.
It's ridiculous. It's such a
That's
farce.
that's crazy talk, John. How dare you?
Yeah, but that in that film, when they got shot out through a shaft, an air shaft, and Arnold Schwarzenegger landed, and he put his
2
hands,
weeks.
yeah, and he put his hand in that thing and he turned it,
Yes.
right? And then it opened up and then it shot that stuff into the air and created an atmosphere where then people were like, oh, they were all swollen. You would die, by the way, if your face got that big. You would never come back to normal. Anyway, that's movies. But and then the air came back in again. Why can not Mars has rivers, dried up rivers. There must have been water in Mars. There is ice in Mars, right? They found ice, right? Now I don't know who cares. We have ice here.
But
But
maybe Mars had global warming. Maybe
maybe
they
that's what did it.
maybe it literally destroyed the planet as time went along. Who
Maybe
knows?
they haven't checked the air to see if there's like a lot of hairspray particles and a lot of
That's
things
true.
that destroyed their ozone. And maybe they came here to try to survive. They
Aha.
had to get out of there because that planet was dying. So they came here to
So
try to
really,
survive.
is are you saying that is no, you can't be saying that. I mean,
That is
you're not
the
saying that they colonized here, are you?
yes. So then they came. Oh my God. Why would they look like that? Why can't they just come down, right? I always say that about aliens. People, it's always like, why don't they just come down and go, hey, oh, hey guys,
Yo,
um,
what's up?
yeah. So I was up there. The planet was kind of screwed up, and we just thought we'd come down here. I learned your languages because I'm pretty smart, so I learned the language. That's why I'm talking like this. I'm really hungry. You guys got anything I could eat?
And you
You
can
know,
say where, and you can ask them where are you from, and they say Mars. You say what part? 125th Street.
the Lower East Side. Yeah. So, but I do believe, and as you know here, anyone that's still watching, and we appreciate you hanging around here. What we do here is we actually just solve these mysteries once
Yes,
and for
yes,
all. And I think George and we solved the mystery
yes.
during the last few minutes here. We everything started on Mars. They ruined the ozone layer on Mars by driving around their cars. There was a guy like an Elon Musk who created an electric car, but it was a little too late, and they couldn't get it going. People still wanted to throw garbage and to do all the stuff that's destroying the environment. Right, the planet was dying. They had to figure out where it was. They found this little blue planet here. Now they had all these dinosaurs that were here, right? So they had to get rid of the dinosaurs first. So what they did was they shot a meteor and the meteor, they shot these big lasers, and the meteor created this huge cloud over the Earth, which killed most of those large. You can't live in a place where you're going to have a pterodactyl or a brontosaurus or
Yeah.
whatever,
Hey,
come.
when that happens.
I mean, you just can't live in a place like this. You got to get rid of them. So they got rid of them. It took them a while. It took a while. They knew they had at least a couple hundred years of oxygen left. They did that. Then they just all got on a big ship. They landed here. They colonized here. They built the pyramids here, the same ones that you find on Mars. Now, the funny thing is that they were originally on the moon, but they ruined the moon. So
Yeah.
from the moon, they went to Mars. From Mars, they went here. And now it looks like probably we're going to end up back on Mars again eventually, because this is probably going to go away at some point. Although I have high expectations for this civilization, that I think we're going to be the ones that handle it and that fix it the right way.
Well, John, if you handle it the way you actually started this whole thing and you've solved that mystery, if you handle it the same way, then I have no doubt that we're going to be in good
Thank
shape.
you. And it's going to be glorious. It's going to be
Absolutely.
glorious. All right. Well, there's our cover of the pyramids. We want to thank everybody for joining us. We know that you learned a lot, and we know that you're probably overwhelmed with all the information that we've given you today. I hope you took notes, and you will join us again next week. And next week we're going to be talking about the moon landing. So
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, so the moon landing, and there's a lot of information on the moon landing, and I have a lot to say on that as well, and I'm sure George does. So I hope you would join us next week. Tell your friends to come join us, and let's talk about the moon landing. And by the way, if you're interested, if you know a lot about this subject and you're still here, or if you have a friend that knows a lot about the subject and they want to actually come on for a few minutes and give us their point of view, we'll send them the link. They'll come on. They'll be our guest, and we'll actually talk a little bit about it. We'll take all opinions, and we'll take all conversation. Anyone that's interested in having a conversation, we'd love to have that. So
Buzz Aldrin.
yes, yeah, absolutely. He'll definitely, yeah. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. George Batista, thank you as always, and
Thank you, sir.
for all of us here at Counterparts, I want to thank you. We'll see you all again next week, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, counterpartsshow.com. By the way, check out our new website. We got a lot of cool things on there as well. And Spotify, if you just want to watch our faces, you only want to listen to us, you can watch it. You can listen to us on Spotify and iTunes and all the other platforms. And from our website, counterpartsshow.com, you'll be able to follow us there. So, and send us messages as well. So thank you, everybody. See you soon. And as always, peace.